A lot of believers are praying for breakthrough while speaking breakdown. We ask God to bless businesses we keep calling small. We say we trust Him, but our words keep agreeing with limitation. Heaven does not respond to desperation. It responds to alignment. You cannot speak like a victim and expect heaven to move like a partner. This is Save Not Soft, a Holy Not Harmless podcast, and I'm your host, Alicia Baker. I'm so blessed to be with you here on this morning, Sunday morning, and this is a space for women called to lead, build, steward, and create without shrinking, burning out, or confusing obedience with passivity. Today, we're going to talk about the power of the tongue, not as a motivational idea, but as a biblical principle that determines success. And I want to anchor this in the book of Numbers. Okay, so we're going to go to the book of Numbers, chapters 13 through 14, right? So during this time, the book of Numbers is about movement, right? It starts with the movement when the Israelites leave Mount Sinai and head toward the promised land. They're not lost, they are on their way, right? But then almost immediately, the complaining starts, right? The land that they were just so happy to go, they were so happy to be away from Egypt and go to the promised land, and almost immediately complaining, right? They're complaining about food. They're complaining about the leadership. They complain about God, even while He is present. For example, it talks about how God provides manna, which is their daily food, right? Something that they can gather, a seed. It's a little seed that they can gather and, prepare and live on. But it wasn't enough for them. They wanted meat. They wanted something familiar, right? But what stuck with me is that even with God in their presence, their attention stayed on Egypt, the past, instead of the future God was leading them into. How many times do we find ourselves in the same position, right? Going back to the past, what's familiar, and scared of what the future holds, right? Any journey into the unknown or even the promised land, right? Even the promised land, right? This is a land out. These people are coming out of slavery, out of years and years of just sadness and hurt and so many things, right? Being disempowered as a people and going to the promised land, and yet they're still wanting to go back to what's familiar, because that is how scary it can be on a journey to something that's unknown, right? And there was a time that the weight became so heavy. Moses cried out to God. He was like, God, I need your help. This leadership has become overwhelming. Like, I can't deal with all this complaining. I don't know what to do with these people. And God responds by appointing 70 elders to help carry the responsibility. And I love that part, because I love to think about it, even in our expansion, it shows you that it was never meant to be carried alone. And God will provide support when you need it. So along with that, God gives them the meat, not just for a day, for a month. He wants them to become sick of it, right? It becomes loathsome. It wasn't a punishment, but it was exposure, because they were craving what didn't belong to the season they were entering, right? He had to prepare them, right? That is what God does. He prepares us. He protects us. He leads us. And so on their way, they stop and they camp in Paran. God instructs Moses to send men and explore the land of Canaan. And simply he says, tell 12 spies to go for 40 days. They go. They return with fruit. And they say, the land is good, but the people are strong. They're giants. They are descendants of Anak. And Then, boom, they said, we look like grasshoppers in our own eyes. We look like grasshoppers in our own eyes. That wasn't a report. That was agreement. Have you ever started something new, felt a calling, move forward, and then suddenly you thinking, who am I to do this? That moment is pairing. That is the moment. In victim language, today it's similar to saying something, when they were saying we look like grasshoppers in our own eyes, it's similar to us saying, I'm just trying to get by. This is just a side thing. I'm not ready yet. I don't feel big enough. Every time you speak low, you agree with limitation. But Caleb and Joshua, two of those spies that went out, they didn't deny the giants, right? They didn't pretend that it was going to be easy. They knew that, it was scary. They did look powerful. We're not going to deny that. Okay. It's not about like this, super positive, over motivational language, right? That we have to speak. It's just about alignment. It's not about denial. So what they said was a little bit different. This is what they said. They said, the land is good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us in. Do not rebel. Do not fear. They weren't louder. They were more clear, right? And even with that, the people, they were scared. But what Caleb and Joshua did was brought hope back to them. They realigned them. They helped them remember who was on their side. How can you lose if God is on your side? If God gave you a vision, whatever it is, however impossible it seems, how can it fail? How can it not be true from the one who cannot lie? How can what he says about you not be true from the one who cannot lie? Let's go back to the story. So God was patient. He provided, he protected, he stayed present. But he would not partner with rebellion disguised as fear. When you use victim language, it isn't you being humble, it's resistance. And that generation stayed in the wilderness. And it just like that generation stayed in the wilderness, that language will keep you stuck. Only Joshua and Caleb entered because they spoke from promise. They spoke God's promises. They agreed to, they believed. And they didn't just say they believed out of their mouths and then said something else. That's a contradiction, right? They felt it. They knew it. They believed it. It carried them forward, right? Thank goodness. Thank God for Caleb and Joshua, right? Because like God said, he had to prepare them for what was next. You don't need to speak to become a conqueror. You speak because you already are one. That's Romans 8:37. More than a conqueror means you were designed for possession, not just to survive, right? That's what that means to me. You are more than a conqueror. You are more than just to get by. Now, I want to put this into activation, okay? As we go through our week, I want you to do these 2 steps, okay? Very practical. Identify one phrase that you've been speaking that keeps you small. Just one, okay? Identify it. And then I want you to replace it with aligned truth, okay? Let me give you some examples. I'm overwhelmed. The shift is, I'm equipped for what I've been called to carry. I don't have enough. God is my source, not my circumstances. You see that shift? Even when you say it out loud, you will feel it in your spirit, right? This isn't some manifestation. This is alignment. And alignment you can feel. You know deep down in your core, yes. This is it, right? So after the wilderness, after the wandering, God speaks directly to Joshua. And Joshua 1 verse 8. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. And this verse is very important because there's a sequence to it, right? Sometimes the language doesn't just come naturally. It starts with what you focus on, right? What we meditate on day and night. That focus is going to shape what you say about yourself. And what you say determines what you do. And action rooted in truth is what produces results. So if you're having trouble with this language, having trouble agreeing, in being in alignment, go back to the word. Meditate on it. Get to know God. Get to know his promises every day, day and night. That's what he says. Don't let this book of law leave your mouth. Meditate on it day and night. Do what it says. Then your way will be prosperous. Then you will have good success. I really hope that this podcast shifted something for you today. I know this is something that we all struggle with, and it's not something that changes overnight. But I think simple awareness, and like I mentioned before, making sure that we're focused on God, he is our first focus. It makes it a lot easier, right? To speak from truth, to speak in alignment. And then it makes it easier to do the things, right? Because we believe it. We truly do. We know we're anchored in it. It's our identity. It's who we are because of who he is. And I just love that. I want to take a moment just to remind you just to watch your words this week. Not because you're trying to force an outcome, but because you're honoring who God already said you are. Let's close with a prayer. God, as we go about our week, help us align our thoughts, our words, and our actions with your will. I renounce fear, lack, and victim thinking. Teach us to steward well, speak life, and move in obedience. We trust you as our provider, our guide, and our source. Amen. You are not behind. You are not late. You are being prepared for possession. Remember that. I will see you next week. God bless.